have a wonderful guest today in Jackie Vossler from the Caxton Club. My name is Jim Moran, and I'm the Hamilton Museum's master printer. We're joined by Logan Madkey with technical support and our executive producer, Stephanie Carpenter. We are going to be recording this show both so that you can watch it later and to keep everything safe and clean. It's a great way to log the great guests that we've got. Jackie Vossler is going to be sharing information about the Book Arts grants and upcoming projects. The Caxton Club brings together archivists, authors, binders, book artists, collectors, conservators, booksellers, designers, editors, librarians, publishers, scholars, and others. Throughout their 125-year history, the Caxton Club has published fine books on a variety of subjects, including Americana, art history, the book arts, the history of printing and collecting, as well as literature. So with no further ado, Jackie Vossler, thank you.
Well, I want to thank the Hamilton Hang team for inviting me. It's a privilege to do that. I also want to inform you that one of my only printing experiences happened at Hamilton, wherein you provided the type for me to print one of my favorite zones, Caxton, My Significant Other. This was done one of our own on the move events, and it's one of my cherished memories of our club. And when Stephanie extended this invitation, she told me that what you wanted to know was something about the Caxton Club. And in thinking about that, I realized that one of the things you need to know about us to really explain what we are doing now about the book arts, what we do about our lectures, all of our events, is to really know something about our history. We become much less mysterious when you know something about our past. The Caxton Club was founded in 1895. We are an old club. And our club the concept for our club was discussed with 11 members. And when they first met on January 26th of 1895, they had a clear idea of what they wanted to do. And they invited 4 local Chicago members of the Grolier Club to join their group. And at their first meeting, there was no discussion about whether they wanted to form a club. They were determined to do that. And by January 31st, they indeed trudged through the Chicago snows. And think about that, it's 1895. And the almanacs tell us there was a snowstorm. And they went to the courthouse and they recorded our articles of incorporation. But before doing that, they provided us with a good guideline about who we might model. And that was William Caxton, first English printer. And what does that tell us about who they were modeling us after, or who I like to think they must have known they were modeling us after? Well, William Caxton was a businessman, had an entrepreneurial spirit. After all, he was undertaking printing in English, and he wanted to persevere. And it was not always just a straight ticket to success. And he certainly did that. So Caxtonians, from the beginning, are both determined and hardy. I want to point that out to all of you. Some of you here are fellow Caxtonians, and it's something I wanted to share. It's part of our heritage. When we did this, one of the things that was the tenets of this, and I'm going to quote, that we wanted to do the production of fine books. And the founders had many wonderful manuscripts, and they wanted to bring those books forward. But they also know to do that, they would need printers, typographers, people who knew something about paper, binders, and publishing. And so in some ways, from the beginning, we had all of those elements were very quickly asked to join our club. And that provides a distinguishing factor about us. It also explains, and now I'm going to let Stephanie share one of our slides about our publications. It explains the Caxton Club's long-running involvement in publications. And if you check our website in the About Us section, it indicates all that we have published. And this includes books that we had available for sale, books that were also part of our keepsakes, broadsides, the vast array of this. Further, in looking online, if you check out Caxton Club publications, you'll see that many of our early publications have now been scanned and made available through the Hattie Trust. And I think this speaks to our early members' dedication to do really fine books. Now, this has not ebbed. And as you look at the books that are stacked here, these are books that are still readily available and represent some of our later efforts in publication. But this effort to publish really fine and interesting books continues. And our recent publication, Chicago by the Book, the 101 publications that shaped Chicago and its culture, is also a remarkable book. Stephanie, will you share that slide now? And I want to share this because it's remarkable in several ways. First of all, it's a remarkable book in that it's had a second printing. And someone recently said that too, in today's market, represents a rare book. But I also want to share with you, it represents our continued interest in sharing wonderful scholarly books with the widest audience. Chicago 101 is perhaps our most commercially successful publication. And that doesn't mean anything except that perhaps the audience we had in mind was broader, and we ensured that many knew about this book. And if you look at the many events that we had surrounding the publication of this book and all the attendant activities, you will see that was certainly true. But the Caxton Club also had, as some of its founding ideas, was that we put forth activities that we would use in promoting books. And to that end, we continue to do many of those activities. One of the activities about this was to do exhibitions and lectures. And the early list of which we've done includes the call out of many of these exhibitions that we had about our collections, about our books, and about the engagement of making these books readily available. Now, in keeping with our ties to our history, and it's because I said earlier, to understand what the Caxton Club is going to do next, one needs to really look back at what does our history tell us. Well, first of all, I want to point out that Chicago 101, like many of its predecessors, it too had its own exhibition. And the Art Institute Ryerson Library hosted an exhibition using no books from the Caxton Club members' own collection, but books held by their own institution that really were reflected in this book. Again, this was our reinterpretation of what does that really mean to have an exhibition about a book. And it is in keeping with current times. We're really bringing multiple books together from lots of different collections is really a very difficult feat, and probably not one that can be done with a club with no permanent location and an all volunteer group. But I would also share that the Caxton Club has pulled on the strings of those desires to exhibit by also starting our own Caxtonians Collect online exhibit. And this is really to bring forward those books that are held by members of the Caxton Club that they would like to share with the general public. And that exhibit, while only Caxton Club members can contribute books, is available for all to take a look at. And we really encourage you to do that, because this too represents one of our long-standing traditions, perhaps with a very different take than our original founders would have recognized even possible. One of the other things that our founders talked about was lectures about books. Well, they did not specifically mention that you will have a lunch or a dinner with these lectures, nor did they ever envision that these lectures would be vis-a-vis Zoom, or perhaps they did not fully envision the idea that many of our meetings and lectures now are co-sponsored with others, both as a way to increase the audience and to provide us with additional resources to actually be able to staff these events. In the last year, during this time when so much was closed, the Caxton Club has hosted or co-hosted 42 events. I doubt if our founders were thinking of 42 events a year. And I'm sure they did not think of Zoom as a way to do that. But each one of these events represented our activities in what we needed to do to further book scholarship for a broad audience. The events, the Zoom portions of these programs, were free and open to all. And that part of what we have done about our lectures was something that we tried to continue. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this program that we have called Caxton on the Move. Well, in the early 70s, the Caxton Club decided that they would focus on having one tour of libraries each year. And Caxton on the Move is really kind of a reinterpretation of that. And before the close of the pandemic, we certainly did a lot of on the move events. And one of those events was actually happened at Hamilton itself. The Caxton Club has always looked for ways to involve itself with libraries and institutions which our membership would find interesting. And we were willing to travel to do this because we do understand that not always can scholarship be brought to us. But one of the other things that I wanted to share with this audience is with the fact that the Caxton Club early founders were interested in the Caxton Club's library and having our own quote unquote reading room. As we moved across the cities and looked at places to locate, Caxton Club moved or relocated a great deal. And having our own library it became clear to us that that probably was a very difficult task. And any of you who own books or book collecting materials know that when you need to move, owning books provides its own moving obstacle. But it also meant that the Caxton Club has been, and always will be, I think, very interested in what we hold in our archive. And our archive at the Newberry is something that we are very, very actively engaged in, making sure that we have all materials we need and supporting. But it also probably explains several other things about the Caxton Club. From the beginning, our interest in having a library may explain why today we have many, many special collections librarians as members and archivists. It is an area that we respect. It is an area that is a natural codependent with the nature of the Caxton Club. And I can't share enough how important that is. In the last year or two, the Caxton Club has also gotten very interested in making sure that the broadest part of our archive also can be easily seen by our members. And soon we're going to open caxtonian.org, and we are going to share with you our early issues of our Caxtonian. And this publication is both scholarly and news about our club. And at one fell swoop, we're going to release the first 18 years along with an index. And they're all scanned. And if you know much about scanning, you know that the material doesn't suddenly jump live to the page. And these original issues were not digitally born. So they did represent something that took us a bit to get together and scan versions. But we are going to make that available, and we're going to make that available to all. And we're going to hope to do some things which will create some searches of those materials to make those early Caxtonians really, really visible. And we have a plan for release about what we will do about going forward. Further, I would be remiss not to mention that if you go to our homepage, the current issue of our Caxtonian is always up on our website. And so all can read it. It's not printable, but it certainly is readable. And we encourage others to take a look, read about us. We're very proud of that, what we do. Now, most importantly, one of the things I was told that this group would be very interested about our grants and scholarships. And I want to explain that these really take several forms. And all of them really started in 2002 in earnest. And this was done because the Caxton Club did indeed realize that in order to move forward, we needed to engage the young. And we were, as I said, a hardy bunch, and we were willing to strike forward and do that. And we did several things. And the first thing that we attempt in doing, the first trials of doing this, were done with Columbia College, right in Chicago, where we had many members and where this provided a good alliance. And for many years, these scholarships were available only to people at Columbia College. And this was not so much really by design as geography. And this continued until at one day we decided that the Caxton Club, because our membership is broadly based, pretty much focused in the Midwest, but very, very broadly based, that we wanted to reach out to the whole Midwest and to all those schools that were offering Masters of Fine Arts in the book production area, the opportunity to receive our grants. Now they're called grants and not scholarships for the simple reason that read our history. Caxton Club is interested in book production, and these grants provide funding for that very last project of what you need to do to get an MFA in book production, for the production of your book arts. And if you look at our list about who we have given these awards to, it's a very long list now. And it's a very long list for absolutely the reason you might think. The grants that are given all have caps on how much money we will fund for any one project, meaning that it's absolutely possible to do this to a number of projects. And the fact that there are many of these artists whose names you will well recognize, and you will recognize them because the Caxton Club has a good eye for what will be good, produce a good artist book. We also began doing some other things. And if you look at the list beginning in 2015, the Caxton Club also looked at our membership. And our grants and scholarships are funded by our membership. And we would be remiss not to make sure that these awards actually reflect the interests of our membership. So if you look at the grants that we have given to Rare Book School, you will notice that each year we give one scholarship. Starting last year, these scholarships are now called the T. Kimball Booker Caxton Club Scholarship. And that is because our member, Kim Booker, has so generously stepped up to make sure that these scholarships will forever be funded. And when I say forever, I'm probably saying that in a broad sense, because nothing can absolutely guarantee forever, but we believe we have seen a path to make that perhaps possible. Last year, in light of the pandemic, and because it became clear to us that with not being able to gather, with having our normal office at the Newberry closed, that we needed to look for a path forward on how we would fund scholarships without actually touching material. And we looked for a way to reinvent what we had always done. And this too goes back to what I said about our founding. Caxton was inventive. And last year, our medal on that score was sorely tested. We offered scholarships to 2 institutions in the book arts area where we felt we had close enough ties that we could ensure that these scholarships kind of really were given in the way intended. And we also partnered with the Bibliographical Society of America to give a scholarship in bibliography. And this too reflects one of the areas of interest to our members, because our members are also book scholars. This year, we're making our grant request, and you can change this slide, is now out online. And we urge, if your school did not receive information about our book arts grants, take us up on the opportunity to apply. It's open to MFA students producing books. And if we missed you, it is only because a small all volunteer staff may not be completely efficient, but we certainly did not do this to be exclusionary of anyone in the Midwest who could apply for the university that could apply for these grants. We've opened the grant part of the book artists back up to the whole Midwest. The Rare Book Scholarship is up online, and you can read all about that on the Rare Book site. And the BSA scholarship is going to be repeated. And I suspect because of the number of people involved with BSA and the fact that that site seems to make this award more meaningful, that is something we are hoping to do as a go forward basis. But it is certainly something we're doing next year. Now, I also want to point out that one of the things that may have kind of gathered this request, will you show some of the next slides, Stephanie? One of the things that, and here's another group of who are these grant winners and what does their work look like? This is a very remarkable list. And if you haven't gone online and saw these drawings close up, please do that. Can you show the next slides? These are the ones that last year were also put forward. Again, some remarkable pieces of work. And the final slide, I think, is here's our 2020 winners. And you can see there's a vast variety of what we select. And keep in mind that these projects are funded and selected based on what students put forth as their prospectus on this work. So the fact that we're able to do this based on, well, here's what I'm writing about, I think remains always to me a big surprise. And it's a great privilege to be on that grants committee where you get to see these books come alive. Stephanie, will you give us the next piece? I want to share some things, some other things about us. And I guess this slide refers to our making our mark. And the Caxton Club, I talked about our history and our looking back and looking forward. Well, over the years, the Caxton Club has had some different interpretations of our logo. And actually, as we did this as part of our 125th anniversary, doing this research somewhat surprised us too. Because many in our club felt that what had really gone on with our logo is that it had always been the same. Well, not so much. And perhaps that's a little bit like our club too. You'll notice that the new logo that I have shared with you at the beginning of the screen does not look so remarkably different from some of these that are the scanned pages within this book. However, the Caxton Club shares the art of looking backward to move forward. And while our current logo does not look like the Nike swoosh, or perhaps is not dramatically different, that is not so surprising because the Caxton Club is always innovating, always looking for what we need to do to move forward. And our making our mark really says it all because we want to make our mark. We are not, and we are very, very proud of where we've been and happy to move forward. Stephanie, will you share the next slides? I share with you some of our latest project, And this latest project represents what we did with our 101 book. As part of our 125th anniversary, we asked book artists and book binders to reimagine what they thought this book might look like in terms of a binding, or how some of the stories contained within the books might move forward in creating new artist books about what they thought would happen. I will share with any who'd like to hear our presentation about what the artists were looking for when they did these books. But the books themselves are going to be auctioned at Potter and Potter on August 28th. And while the binders and the book artists were compensated by the Caxton Club early on in this project, the monies we receive back will make sure that projects like this can continue. We're a small, all-volunteer club, but we will always look for ways to move forward and produce great work in the area of the book. I'm going to close with some invitations because I wanted to share with you that our invitation to join us, attend our meetings, find out about our books is very, very genuine. Our Zoom meetings are open to all. I invite you to attend these upcoming meetings in September. Please do take us up on it. And with that, I conclude my remarks. And I want to thank you again for providing us the opportunity to talk about us. I welcome any questions you might have.
Jackie, that was so interesting.
Well, thank you.
There was one question earlier in the chat, and I think that I will I'll maybe try to phrase it with something else. But the individual was asking about the MCBA, Minnesota Center for Book Arts, and with regard to that, they were asking if the Caxton Club has ever engaged in classes or lectures in the production of books or book binding.
Well, we certainly haven't engaged in giving classes, but we certainly are engaged. We have been engaged with the Minnesota Center for the Book Arts. We send out an invitation so that they post it on their bulletin board for our grants. And we certainly have connections with those involved with that organization. We've just never really given classes. And I think the reason for that is because we do have many within our club who give classes and provide information about producing the books in that way. And to favor any one of them might not be the best idea for our club. That being said, I don't think that precludes us from thinking about how we might offer, here's some events or here's what's happening in this area as an online, here's some ideas of what you might do without really being an endorsement.
Mm-hmm.
Does the Caxon Club collect artist books? Well, what I would have to say about that is something that was contained in my remarks. We do not really have our own library. But last year, when we were looking for ways in which we could engage with the book artists and so on, we did give a collection prize. And so one of the books from one of our book artists was indeed acquired and is now at the Newberry for that reason. But the Caxton Club also has a lot of members who collect artists' books. And those collections do find their ways to public institutions and are noted that this was a Caxton Club winner. So do we collect books? No, but we promote artists' books in a sufficient way to maybe stimulate the collection of artists' books.
And I would just add on to that, if I could, that looking at the list of individuals, I noted that someone like Radha Pandey, for example, a woman from India, I think currently living in Norway or somewhere like that, but obviously your reach goes far beyond the Midwest in terms of who you're in.
And you, right, and Jim, you must know that when Radha was given that award, she was at the University of Iowa. And so, and this too speaks to what our reach is now. The Caxton Club does go to our grants committee. And I want to give a call out here to Eileen Madden and Martha Chipless, who might be someone who's well known to all of you. They go to great lengths to make sure we stay in touch with our grant recipients. We try to invite them back for, in the old days when we actually hosted dinners in November for the Grants Arts, we would invite them back to join us for dinner. But we do all we can do to try to keep in touch with them. And our book, the auction that we're having at Potter and Potter, we also sent out to our book artists the opportunity that if they wanted to contribute some work to be auctioned, not for our benefit, but for their own, to kind of achieve a wider audience, that we would facilitate that. And that's one of the things I'd want to talk about and say about the Caxton Club. I said earlier, Caxton was an innovator and a businessman. Well, the current Caxton Club is sort of an innovator and facilitator, and we still do that.
Excuse me. Sorry, you had mentioned when we were just getting started how incredibly active you've been in the past year. And, you know, like us, you are doing your lectures in a different format, but I think that you said 42 or something like that?
Yes. And now I would also say about this, that we did 42. This is a combination of things. Number one, we were able to find some really fantastic partners. And number two, I said we were all volunteer, but we have very active volunteers. And so, I was very concerned about the fact that many of our members wanted to find out about many of these programs. And by partnering with others, we could get the word out to them to participate. And it gave the program committee something to do. And maybe we have a really active program committee. And I want to thank Doug Fitzgerald and his team for all they do to make that possible. And then the president's own committee, who are people that are called into service on the spot, you know, kind of like now. And that enables us to do 42.
Jackie, what is the membership at in terms of number of members, and what's the initiation part of it like if you want to join?
Okay, well, right now the Caxton Club has 340 members. We're always looking for new members. And Stephanie was onto our ruse really early, even before we came online. She said to me, I noticed you've eliminated your initiation fee for another year. Well, we have done that. And we have done that because we recognize that in the book world, the pandemic has not been always kind to all of us equally, number one. And number two, we really did want to be certain that we reached out to the next generation. So we've eliminated all initiation fees. We've always had a young members dues structure. And this has been going on for more than 15 years. Early on, even before others realized that we need to reach out to the next generation, the Caxton Club Council recognized that as something that needed to happen. The initiation process is a modification, probably, of what we had traditionally. What has to happen is you fill out an application. You are contacted by one of our membership people, either Lou Pitchman or Susan Haynes or myself. And we'll ask you, if you haven't filled it out online, who in the club you know. And we will have them put forward your nomination. And it's really the application you yourself have submitted. And the reason we ask for someone to support you is because we think that joining the Caxton Club probably works best as a buddy system. And some of the new members who are on here will recognize the fact that they maybe had a buddy. And sometimes that buddy was because I have gotten to know them online and we've reached out together. The buddy could mean many things. Your name is brought before council, and the next thing you know, you receive a letter that says you're now a member. And one of the other things you receive is a copy of our history. And for those of you who have received that history, I can just tell you, and I include this as a note to each one. We give a copy of our history because we're proud of our heritage. And we think that when you understand our heritage, you will understand everything about the organization that you have joined. So we're always delighted to send out those histories. And you can look online. The process about how you join is really pretty simple. And we've tried to have it as straightforward as possible.
One question earlier on, Jackie, had to do with the grants that are given out. And the question had to do with whether they're available to independent artists, not just MFAs or other students.
You know, Jim, that is one of the things that I think the grants committee is really looking into. Because when we envisioned this, this was really focused on the MFA program. And one of the things that the grants committee realizes is that that's something we probably need to go back and look at. I think that we're concerned. It's a small committee. And I think Martha reached out and said, you know, if you're a Caxton member and want to be on the grants committee, send in your name. But this is true. We are looking for additional people on that committee. But we're worried about, we don't want to be overwhelmed by requests because we do vet those. Each and every one of those requests is vetted. So, but I think we're looking for ways to do that in a broader way, because certainly MFAs in the book arts is not necessarily an expanding field. And we know that. And we're looking ahead about what we need to do to make those more meaningful to more.
When you mentioned earlier about friends within the membership, it reminded me of one of our friends who is Paul Gale. And I understand that there is a lecture coming up by him. Could you talk about that?
Well, the lecture that's coming up by Paul is really focused, and it's done in conjunction with the Chicago Art Deco Society. And the reason that is being done is because that type font has a real strong heritage in the Deco tradition. And early on last winter, the Chicago Art Deco Society produced a booklet. And one of the things that was in their own magazine was information about Paul in this new book and the ties that has to a Deco tradition. So sometimes when we look for partners, this becomes real apparent as to who the partner might be. There's a real strong connection. So, and that will be all about that. But to that end, you know, the Caxton Club has some ties to some other people that I think you know within your club. Jen Farrell is a member of the Caxton Club. And one of those books you saw there in that auction is indeed a book that was produced for as a reinterpretation of our 101 book by Jen Farrell. So we do, Hannah Batzel is one of our members. We have a lot of book artists who are members who've had long connections with the Caxton Club.
Mhm. You had also, I believe, had Matthew Carter on to speak as well.
We had Matthew Carter. This kind of goes to the, remember I said in the beginning, the Caxton Club sponsors lectures. Well, lectures don't necessarily need to be given over the microphone of the Caxton Club. And in that case, the lecture was given, sponsored by the Caxton Club, but delivered at the Newberry Library. And that seemed in keeping with who holds those really wonderful collections on printing and so on. And that too was something a lot of our members were very interested in and allowed us to really focus on that which we do, which is facilitate information about the books and book artists. And we're always pleased to do that. We can't always do it. We can't necessarily fund everything, but we certainly would do some things to put events of interest out online or some things like that. We do that.
There's some really nice links for those who want to look at it more. Steph's keeping up at a wonderful rate, and our pal Martha Chiplis is also weighing in as well, which is pretty wonderful.
Well, it is wonderful. I will tell Martha, thank you, because obviously I didn't have all this prepared in the way I should have.
Well, I think what I'm sort of coming away with is the volume of information. I mean, it seems like the club's sort of accomplishing their mission because you really have such a broad base of places you are pulling from.
We have a broad base of those from which we're pulling from. I share with everyone who will listen, I am very honored to lead 350 Eagles, book Eagles. And so when you have a team of Eagles, it's pretty easy to soar. And that's what I would like to say about our club. We really do have a wonderful membership, and all that we achieve is really a wonderful reflection of that membership.
I think too that there's a really wonderful continuity in that you've got someone like Paul Gale, which gives you that great Newberry connection, but Jill Gage as the successor to his department is also a wonderful addition.
That is very true. The connection between the Caxton Club and the Newberry is very, very strong. And when you look at others who've been very involved in our club, Jim Wells, Frank Peel, the Caxton Club has been very lucky, fortunate to be so actively engaged with the Newberry. And being a leader of a club like the Caxton Club is made easy when you have such strong foundation. And we always have many to call on within our club who know our history well and make sure that we steer the course appropriately. Makes my job easy.
Well, and kind of fun as well, having,
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
do you meet during the year in person when those things are possible?
When it's possible, and we hope it will be again, the Caxton Club meets regularly, twice a month, every month, September to June, except in April, when we don't have a luncheon meeting, because historically we did something called a symposium, which would happen over several days. Now, I am a two-time president. During my first year of presidency, when I had to announce that there would be no meetings, I was heartbroken. But since early on in the pandemic, the Caxton Club has began doing Zoom meetings. And so we have met, even during those first early months of the pandemic, in April and May of that year, we certainly went back and met via Zoom. Physically, we have not met for some time now. And the club has a real social fabric to it. And like all social clubs, that has been very hard. We're looking for being able to meet again in person. We're trying to stick our toe into that water. In September, we're going to do something where we have invited members of the Caxton Club and or the Art Deco Society to attend live, and all others vis-a-vis Zoom. But to be honest, Jim, I have no clue. Well, I can tell you what the history of the Caxton Club is. The history of this virus remains more or less clear to us. And so I don't know if we're really going to be able to pull these meetings, live meetings off, but we will try.
Can I ask how you became involved with the club?
Well, I will share with the following with you. I had always been kind of a long time closeted book collector. Now I own my own business. I was spending a lot of time in Asia, and I was fairly busy. So I didn't really have time to join any club whatsoever. But when I retired, I decided I was looking around at a club that would engage in book collecting. And fellow Caxtonian, who you may know well, Bob Caro, suggested to me that I attend this symposium. And when I did, after that, I would like to say the rest is really kind of history. I was absolutely enthralled, addicted, and Jackie Vossler on an addiction may produce what you see in front of you now. So it was very easy for me to become involved once I decided I had the time to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds wonderful. I would like to thank you again for a wonderful program. The images of the books itself is great. What a wealth of knowledge and artistry. It's amazing. So thank you so much.
Well, and again, thank you for inviting us. And the other thing is, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to print Caxtonian, my significant other. It's just, it was the perfect thing. And thanks again. And any of you that are interested, check us out, www.caxtonclub.org. Please join us. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And thanks to all of you for showing up again today. I appreciate it. And thanks to Logan on the technical end, and thanks to Steph for making things run so smoothly in the background. So it's, she reminds me inadvertently of the shoes I'm filling here and in hosting. So well done and thank you.
Thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Jackie. That was delightful.
Mm-hmm.